Emma Sullivan had always believed her life with James was perfect, but one hidden secret shattered everything. When Lily Harper noticed her friend's growing unease, little did she know it was the calm before a storm. James's betrayal with Vanessa Clark set in motion a chain of events no one could foresee, and Victor Stone's unexpected interference turned a carefully planned revenge into a deadly game. What would Emma do when betrayal, obsession, and danger collided in a single night? Emma Sullivan's life seemed perfect from the outside. Her white picket fence, manicured garden, and elegant suburban home made her the envy of her neighbors. Every morning, she walked through the halls of her house with a calm smile, greeting the sun as it streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow on the polished floors. To anyone who passed by, Emma had it all: beauty, wealth, and a devoted husband, James, who seemed to have been plucked from a magazine cover. Their marriage appeared flawless, a story straight out of a romance novel. But perfection is often a mask. Beneath the glittering surface, Emma felt a subtle tension, a nagging unease she couldn't ignore. It wasn't anything she could easily put into words, but it was there, a quiet feeling that something was off, something that she couldn't see clearly yet. She brushed it aside at first, telling herself that everyone has fleeting doubts and insecurities. Yet the feeling persisted, lurking in the corners of her mind, growing stronger with each passing day. Emma's life was not lonely. Her best friend, Lily Harper, was a constant presence, someone who had known her since childhood. Lily noticed the small changes: Emma's distant gaze, her occasional sighs when James wasn't looking, the way she would pause mid-sentence as if lost in thought. But whenever Lily tried to probe, Emma would shake her head and force a smile, insisting that everything was fine. Lily accepted her friend's words, but deep down she felt the tension too, sensing that something was hidden beneath the calm surface. James, for his part, was a man of charm and influence. He had a successful career in finance, traveled frequently, and could command attention in any room. He was polite, courteous, and seemingly devoted to Emma. Yet, in recent months, subtle cracks had begun to appear in his carefully constructed facade. He spent more time on his phone, often leaving the house abruptly, claiming late meetings or urgent calls. His once warm greetings had become brief nods and half-hearted smiles. Something about the way he moved, the way he avoided certain questions, made Emma's instincts scream that something was wrong. Emma tried to ignore the small signs at first. Perhaps it was paranoia, she thought, or the natural insecurities that creep into every marriage over time. She focused on her routines, the little joys that had always grounded her: tending her garden, baking on Sunday afternoons, and sharing quiet dinners with James. But the more she tried to convince herself that nothing was amiss, the more certain she became that she was missing a hidden truth, one that would shatter the calm world she had built. Late at night, when the house was silent and shadows danced across the walls, Emma's mind would wander to places she dared not speak of. She would imagine scenarios that were impossible, yet they felt frighteningly real. The nagging suspicion grew into obsession. Something had changed in James, something he wasn't telling her. She didn't yet know what it was, but the dread of discovering it gnawed at her constantly. Lily, unaware of the full extent of Emma's unease, would sometimes remark on James's successes, his charisma, the perfect life they shared. Emma would nod politely, her heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and curiosity. She began to watch James more closely, noticing patterns in his behavior that seemed off: an unfamiliar smile at a phone notification, a lingering glance at his reflection, a phone call he ended abruptly. Every detail seemed to whisper secrets she wasn't meant to know. And so, what began as a vague unease settled into a tense anticipation, a feeling that a storm was silently gathering behind the walls of their elegant home. Emma had no idea what awaited her, only that something dark and undeniable was waiting to be revealed. A truth that would forever change the life she thought she knew. Emma's uneasy feeling had been growing for weeks, a persistent shadow she couldn't shake. One evening, while James was out for one of his late meetings, she decided to tidy up the bedroom. a task she often used to distract herself from her racing thoughts. As she moved his belongings, carefully placing them back in drawers and closets, something caught her eye. A faint glint from the corner of the dresser, a phone she had never noticed before, tucked under a stack of documents. Her heart skipped a beat. She hesitated, telling herself she shouldn't pry, that trust was the foundation of their marriage. But the pull of curiosity was irresistible, stronger than the polite voice of reason. With trembling hands, Emma unlocked the phone. What she found there made her stomach drop, and her vision blur. Messages, dozens of them, exchanged between James and a woman named Vanessa Clark. The words were flirty, intimate, and unmistakably inappropriate. The more she read, the more her world seemed to tilt. There were secret plans, hidden meetings, and confessions of passion that she could never have imagined. Each message was a stab in the heart, a cruel reminder that the man she had trusted completely had been living a double life. Emma's breath came in shallow bursts, as shock and anger collided inside her. Her mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? How could she have missed the signs? She felt betrayed in ways she hadn't thought possible, a raw, burning fury that coursed through her veins. But alongside the rage was a creeping, chilling curiosity. She wanted to know everything, every lie, every deception, every secret he had kept. She had uncovered only the surface. She sensed there was far more beneath, hidden in shadows she hadn't dared to explore. Her best friend, Lily, had always been her confidant, the one person who could provide comfort when life seemed unbearable. But Emma hesitated. How could she explain the depth of her anguish without sounding paranoid, without letting the world know the betrayal she had just discovered? She decided to wait, to process the storm inside her before sharing it with anyone. Still, Lily's presence haunted her thoughts. She imagined telling her friend everything, imagining Lily's shock and disbelief, and a part of her ached at the idea of confiding in someone she had once trusted completely. As the night deepened and rain began to tap against the windows, Emma's mind became consumed with plans and possibilities. The anger that burned in her chest slowly transformed into a cold, calculating determination. She could no longer imagine confronting James with words alone. Something more powerful, more decisive, was taking shape in her thoughts. The life she had known, the marriage she had cherished, could never be restored with apologies or tears. She needed control, a way to reclaim her world from the man who had shattered it so completely. Emma began to observe James in ways she had never done before. She noted his routines, the times he left the house, the paths he took, and the subtle habits he carried out without realizing she was watching. Every glance at his phone, every abrupt exit from the room, became a clue, a piece of the puzzle she had been forced to assemble. With each observation, her sense of purpose solidified, and the initial shock faded into a steely resolve. She also became aware of Vanessa, though she had never met the woman in person. Through the messages, she pieced together Vanessa's personality, her routines, her influence over James. It was unnerving, knowing that someone had quietly intruded into her life, yet it fueled Emma's resolve even more. She would not allow herself to be a victim of this betrayal. She had uncovered the truth, and now she would decide how the story ended. By the time James returned that night, drenched from the storm, Emma had already begun weaving the threads of a plan. She greeted him with a calm, practiced smile, concealing the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions raging inside her. In her heart, a decision had already been made. She would no longer be powerless. The betrayal was just the beginning, the spark that would ignite a chain of events no one could have predicted. Emma's discovery of James's betrayal had changed her completely. The initial shock had faded, replaced by a focused, almost frightening determination. She no longer felt like the woman who had poured her heart into a marriage she thought was perfect. Every glance at James now carried a hidden calculation. Every smile she gave him a carefully constructed mask. She began to plan, piece by piece, how she would reclaim control over her life, and make James pay for the deceit he had hidden behind his polished facade. Her first step was observation. She followed James's routines with precision, noting the times he left for work, routes he took, the friends he met, and the cafes he frequented. Every tiny habit became vital information. She began to see patterns that would have gone unnoticed by anyone else. The way he checked his phone at certain moments, the slight nervous twitch when receiving certain messages, even the way he adjusted his tie before entering his office. Each detail was a clue, a small thread that could be pulled to unravel the life he thought was hidden from her. Emma's obsession with control extended to Vanessa, the woman who had invaded her marriage. Although she had never met her, Emma learned everything she could from the messages. Vanessa's favorite spots, her schedule, her tone when speaking to James. It all became a map in Emma's mind. There was a chilling thrill in knowing that she could anticipate every move, that the secret world James had built would soon become visible to her, and perhaps to no one else. She began to test her own resolve, imagining different scenarios and how she would respond. Thoughts that had once terrified her now seemed practical, even necessary. She considered confrontations, but they felt too weak, too ordinary. Words could not undo the betrayal, and tears could not erase the lies. Her mind sought a plan that would ensure total control, one where James would be left with no chance to manipulate or deceive again. It was during this period of quiet obsession that she remembered Victor Stone, an acquaintance she had met through a distant social circle. Victor was mysterious, with connections that were rumored to be unconventional, and a knowledge of situations most people would avoid entirely. Emma reached out to him carefully, testing his interest without revealing too much. Victor responded with subtle intrigue, hinting at ways he could assist her in achieving outcomes that were otherwise impossible. There was a dangerous thrill in this partnership, a sense of walking on the edge of a precipice, where one wrong step could change everything. Lily, meanwhile, remained unaware of the full depth of Emma's intentions. She noticed Emma's unusual focus, the way she watched James, the way she catalogued every small detail in her journals. But Emma's careful composure kept Lily from suspecting the storm brewing beneath the surface. Every conversation, every meeting with her friend, was layered with half-truths and calculated omissions. Emma knew that if anyone discovered the extent of her obsession, her plan would be compromised. As days turned into weeks, Emma's preparations became meticulous. She studied the potential consequences of each choice, weighing risks and benefits with the precision of a chess player plotting a game several moves ahead. She gathered tools, memorized escape routes, and imagined every possible outcome. The thrill of planning, the intoxicating control over an unpredictable world, became her new reality. The anger that had once consumed her was now sharpened into something cold, calculated, and deadly. Through it all, she remained outwardly composed, the devoted wife James believed her to be. But beneath the surface, a storm was gathering. A storm that no one, not James, not Vanessa, and not even Lily, could foresee. Emma's mind was no longer a space for doubt or fear. It had become a forge where her plan was taking shape, precise and unyielding. Every decision she made, every observation she recorded, brought her closer to a reckoning that would change all their lives forever. Emma had stepped beyond the boundary of ordinary heartbreak. She was no longer the woman who had been betrayed. She was a strategist, a planner, and a force determined to reclaim her life at any cost. And as she watched James from the shadows of her carefully constructed normalcy, she knew that the moment to act was drawing nearer, and when it came, it would leave no one untouched. Emma's careful planning had brought her to a point where she felt almost invincible. Every detail of James's life was meticulously mapped in her mind, every habit catalogued, every weakness noted. But as her focus sharpened, she began to notice subtle changes in him. Glances he threw that lingered too long, questions asked with an edge she hadn't heard before, and moments where he seemed to watch her more closely than usual. The realization hit her slowly but undeniably. James had begun to sense that something was wrong. It started with small things. A misplaced cup on the counter, a book slightly out of place, the way she always seemed to know his schedule. James, who had once assumed she was oblivious, now paused at these anomalies. Emma observed him with a mixture of excitement and caution. Each instance of suspicion became a challenge, a test of her ability to maintain her composure while carrying out the plan she had spent weeks perfecting. Meanwhile, Vanessa remained blissfully unaware of the storm building around her. The messages continued, and James's attention on her seemed sharper than ever. Emma knew Vanessa's habits, her favorite cafes, the patterns of her daily life. She felt a strange mixture of contempt and fascination for the woman who had intruded into her life. The thought that Vanessa was completely in the dark about the danger surrounding her sent a chill down Emma's spine and intensified the thrill of control she now wielded. Victor Stone became a crucial part of her preparations. He offered advice and tools that made the impossible seem attainable. Each conversation with him reinforced the idea that Emma could shape the outcome entirely on her own terms. Yet, there was a shadow of unease she could not ignore. Victor's motives were never entirely clear, and sometimes his guidance veered into areas that felt dangerously unpredictable. Emma's mind weighed every suggestion carefully, discarding what seemed risky while adopting methods that ensured the plan remained hers alone. James's suspicions grew steadily, manifesting in brief, pointed questions about her daily activities and the casual way she seemed to know details of his schedule. Emma never flinched. She met each challenge with a calm, serene demeanor, hiding the storm of thoughts and calculations raging within. But she knew that if James's intuition continued to sharpen, it could threaten everything she had built. The tension in the house became palpable, a quiet electricity that crackled in every room, in every glance exchanged between them. One evening, James lingered near the kitchen, pretending to busy himself with dinner preparations, but Emma could feel his eyes on her. She continued her tasks with deliberate normalcy, wiping the counter, arranging plates, and moving as if nothing had changed. Yet beneath the surface, her mind raced. Every move he made, every small gesture, became another piece of the puzzle she had to anticipate. She realized that he might be closer to uncovering her intentions than she had anticipated. The balance between careful observation and reckless exposure became increasingly fragile. Emma's plan required him to remain unsuspecting, but the more she executed it, the more she saw him catching glimpses of her intent. Each near discovery heightened the tension, making every night feel like a tightrope walk over a chasm, with no room for error. Even Lily, who often visited during the day, began to notice a subtle edge in Emma's demeanor, a quiet intensity that was both captivating and alarming. And so the stage was set for the final act. Emma remained outwardly composed, the picture of the dutiful wife, while beneath the surface, a deadly game of observation and anticipation unfolded. Every glance, every shadow, every whispered footstep became part of a larger dangerous dance. James was beginning to sense the danger lurking in their seemingly ordinary home, but he could not yet see the depth of the storm Emma had summoned. The next steps, carefully plotted yet perilously close to unraveling, would determine whose life would dominate and whose would crumble under the weight of betrayal and revenge. The night Emma had been planning for weeks finally arrived. Storm clouds rolled across the sky, lightning streaking in brief, violent flashes that illuminated the Sullivan estate in jagged bursts. The rain pounded against the windows, a relentless percussion that mirrored the rhythm of Emma's heartbeat. She moved through the house with quiet precision, every motion deliberate, rehearsed countless times in her mind. Tonight, everything had to unfold exactly as she had envisioned. One misstep, one small hesitation, and everything could collapse. James returned later than usual, his arrival announced only by the soft thud of his car tires on the wet driveway. Emma had prepared the scene meticulously, subtle adjustments that would make any evidence appear accidental. From the carefully placed objects in the kitchen, to the positioning of furniture that seemed mundane but would play a crucial role in her plan. She waited, calm and collected, her outward composure beliing the storm of anticipation inside her. Every sound of the house, the drip of rain, the rustle of leaves, the creak of floorboards was amplified in her awareness, each one signaling the moment she had been waiting for. But the plan did not unfold as smoothly as she had imagined. Victor Stone, her enigmatic ally, had betrayed her. She realized it too late, as subtle shifts in the situation revealed his intentions. He had manipulated the timing, creating an opening for his own gain, a way to benefit from the chaos he had helped engineer. Emma's blood ran cold, but instinct took over. She could not afford panic. Every element of her preparation became a lifeline, a set of tools to turn the betrayal back in her favor. James, unaware of the full scope of the unfolding danger, moved through the house with casual confidence. He noticed something unusual, a faint scent, a misplaced object, but he could not yet comprehend the gravity of what was happening. Emma followed his movements with calculated precision, her mind racing through contingencies and responses. She had rehearsed every step of the plan, and now she had to improvise to compensate for Victor's treachery. The confrontation, though silent and unseen by any outside observer, was electric with tension. Emma moved with controlled determination, manipulating the environment in subtle ways that would leave James vulnerable while concealing her presence. She felt a thrill in the precise execution, a mix of fear and exhilaration that sharpened her senses. The storm outside intensified, the wind howling through the trees as if echoing the chaos that had taken root inside the house. Victor attempted to assert control, believing he could manipulate Emma's plan for his own benefit, but Emma anticipated his move. In the shadows, she turned the tables, using the very knowledge and preparation that had made her plan formidable to counter his interference. Victor faltered, caught in the web he had helped construct, while Emma's calculated measures ensured that James would remain the central figure in the storm she had created. The night stretched on, a tense and dangerous sequence of near reveals, careful maneuvering, and silent calculations. Emma's focus never wavered. She moved like a shadow, a ghost within her own home, unseen but omnipresent, guiding the outcome toward the exact conclusion she desired. James, unaware of the deadly precision surrounding him, continued to move through the house, oblivious to the fate that awaited him. By the early hours of the morning, the storm outside began to subside, but the devastation inside had already been set into motion. James lay defeated, caught in the consequence of his betrayal, and Victor's ambitions had crumbled under Emma's sharp, unyielding strategy. The silence that followed was heavy, suffused with a mixture of relief and lingering dread. Emma, triumphant yet shaken, realized that the night had changed everything. She had achieved her revenge, but the cost, its complexity, the danger, and the moral weight would haunt her in ways she had not anticipated. The morning after the storm, the Sullivan estate was eerily silent. The once lively home, filled with the familiar rhythms of daily life, now felt hollow, as if it were holding its breath. Emma moved through the rooms with a calmness that belied the chaos of the previous night. The plan had worked, but the aftermath was a different kind of test, one that required patience, composure, and a careful maintenance of appearances. Every step she took had to reinforce the illusion of normalcy, masking the darkness that had quietly reshaped her life. James's absence was the first undeniable sign that the storm had left permanent damage. No one could know what had happened, and Emma intended to ensure it stayed that way. The neighbors, oblivious to the tension that had simmered behind the walls, continued their routines, while the world beyond the estate moved on without question. But inside, Emma's mind was racing, calculating each possible consequence, each potential threat. Every visitor, every phone call, every minor disturbance was a variable that could unravel the fragile balance she had created. Victor Stone had vanished as swiftly as he had appeared, leaving behind only traces of the betrayal he had attempted to orchestrate. Emma was relieved but wary. The memory of his treachery lingered, a reminder that trust was a dangerous luxury. She had outmaneuvered him, but the danger had not entirely passed. She knew that secrets like the ones she now held could attract unwanted attention, and one careless move could undo everything she had worked for. Lily, once Emma's closest confidant, now stood at a distance. The subtle shift in Emma's demeanor, the intensity in her eyes, and the quiet, controlled air of someone who had carried herself through something unimaginable had created an invisible barrier between them. Lily tried to reach out, sensing that something profound had occurred, but Emma's carefully maintained calm, prevented any intrusion. She had become a figure of mystery and quiet authority, someone whose presence demanded respect and caution, and whose past actions could never be fully known. Vanessa, the unwitting intruder into Emma's life, had disappeared from the city without warning. No one knew where she had gone, or if she had any inkling of the danger she had narrowly avoided. Her absence created another layer of distance, another ghost of the past that would linger indefinitely. Emma found a strange satisfaction in knowing that the world had shifted entirely around her actions, that those who had threatened her life and peace were no longer a part of her world. As days turned into weeks, the community began to speculate about James's sudden disappearance. But there were no clear answers. Authorities investigated, but every trail led to ambiguity. Emma maintained her role as the composed widow, grieving with measured expressions and careful gestures. She moved through the public eye with the precision of someone who had rehearsed every possible reaction, ensuring that no suspicion fell upon her. Yet in private she was haunted, not by fear of discovery, but by the magnitude of what she had done. The power she had wielded came with an invisible weight, one that pressed down on her every thought. Emma had reclaimed control, but the victory was bittersweet. She had executed her plan flawlessly, yet the echoes of her actions would follow her forever. She understood, perhaps better than anyone, that revenge is a force that changes those who wield it as much as those against whom it is directed. She had entered the storm as a betrayed wife and emerged as someone entirely different, calculating, precise, and irrevocably transformed. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a monument to choices made and consequences endured. Emma walked its halls, aware that the quiet was deceptive. The world outside had not changed, but within these walls everything had shifted. She was no longer the woman who had been betrayed. She was the architect of a story that would never be told, a life reshaped by fire, rain, and a darkness that had quietly consumed her, leaving her victorious, forever altered, and undeniably alone.